Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Road Hard Restorations, where we are working on the 74 Duster. In this video, we're going to be assembling the front suspension. Finally, I've been storing parts in this trunk for over a year now, since I got stuff rebuilt. Got all sorts of goodies in here. I got new rotors, shocks. I got the exhaust manifolds restored, ready to go on. Got a plethora of pulleys to choose from. Got the refurbished spindles, rebuilt upper and lower control arms. I got brake hoses. I got a new quarter vent window. I got all new front steering and just tons of parts for this thing. I've just been trying to find the time to actually work on this darn thing. So let's get all of this suspension out of here, so that way we can get this thing back together. Got all the initial parts laid out. Got the hardware. There's stuff for the other side. What I like to do when I have a project to put back together that I took apart months and months ago, I like to lay everything out and make sure I have everything accounted for and know right where everything goes. And then if I can, try to get all the tools gathered together that I need. So I got the shock, got the torsion bar, and I just got that cleaned up and painted, so it's still drying, but it'll go in last. Got the upper control arm, lower control arm, got the strut rod, got the spindle, caliper bracket, backing plate, lower ball joint. This is the bolt for the shock, the lower bolt. That's the adjuster assembly. There's two pieces. There's the little bump stop. This is the stack for the front of the strut rod. Got the front and rear bolts, or nuts rather. I got the upper control arm mounting, adjusting bolts here. I have a little bit of Loctite for these threads right here that go into the spindle. I'm not going to go ahead and clean all this up. I mean, all the undercoating is actually in good shape. Anything that did come up was mostly the seam sealer around here, but the rest of this is actually stuck on pretty good, so there's no sense taking it off. It's still doing its job. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together. Like I said, this isn't a show car, it's just a nice driver. I'm going to go ahead and put the bushing stack on the front of the strut rod. I hope I have all the right pieces. First, we got the big heavy washer, then a bushing. We also have this little insert here. Goes all the way in. It looks like that. And then it'll go right into this hole right here. That'll find its center in the hole. Now I don't want to put that in too tight, just kind of like that, just so it doesn't fall out. Because we got to connect it to this. This will go in together. There we go. Just slides in that upper hole there, and this goes in there just like so. Then we put this nut on here. Now I don't really tighten anything up yet until I kind of get everything put together. Now the lower control arm's got this big thick washer and a big heavy lock nut. It's not a nylock nut, it's a crimp nut. And it threads onto the back here. In case you're keeping score, this takes a 15th, 16th socket. Before you get that all tightened up, like I said, nothing's really tight yet. Probably easier to do before you put it together is put the adjuster in. So the adjuster just kind of slides in here like so and drops in place. Just kind of hangs out there. And then the screw, which actually does the adjusting, threads into that and pushes up against the underside of this lever right here. You don't want to put it together just dry, so I smear a little bit of just some chassis grease on the threads and then a little bit on the tip before I assemble it. Now you don't need a whole lot. That's actually way too much. Perfect. That's probably more than I need. That's okay. And this will just simply thread in. When you put your adjusting screw in, you want it just barely sticking out, because you want this arm all the way down, so that way it's lined up correctly when you go to put your torsion bar in. This is just a little rubber bump stop. It limits the downward travel of the upper control arm. So when it's in full droop, it's not hanging down too low. And this is running a 9/16 nut on this one. Yours may vary depending on the brand of the part. Okay, let's install my freshly rebuilt control arm. Hopefully it doesn't give me any fits going in here. This is where a hammer will help. I run the adjusters from the inside out and then put the nuts on the outside. There we go. Sometimes you just gotta mess with it a little bit till they finally drop in. Okay. And the other side doesn't want to go in yet. Sometimes you can kind of put your finger in there and kind of see where it needs to go. Okay, this needs to go down a little bit. Don't have your finger in there when you hit it. That might hurt. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put the other eccentric on there, tighten it down a little bit. Take the other eccentric here, slide it all the way on there, add the nut. Adjusting these will adjust the camber as well as a little bit on the caster. If you bring this one further out and this one all the way in, that's effectively going to be moving your caster. Bring them both in, it's going to affect your camber. In and out overall is going to affect your camber. So next up is the lower ball joint. You'll want to put this on there first. It's just easier when it's in your hand to put the Zerk fitting on there, grease fitting. Now you can mount this to the spindle and then put the whole thing on. I like to hang this on first, but you can do it either way. One of the advantages of putting the ball joint on first is make it easy to get to the cotter pin. And the other thing you can do when you're putting these together is orientate the hole for the cotter pin in a convenient way where you can get to both sides of it. Like this one, for instance, it's going forward and back, and when the spindle's right here, it's going to be hard to get to the back of it. So if you turn it so the pin goes in this way, you can get to it easier. But again, that's just for future maintenance. You know, when you want to service it, you can get to the pin easier. Now time for the spindle. Now you could hang it from the top and then bring it down, but I'm just going to bolt it right to here and then bring it up to the made them up that way. Alrighty, so we'll get the get these bolts in here. Put the nuts on the back. These are 15/16 nuts. So once you got that bolted up, drop the lower control arm back down and bring it up to it. There it goes. Lots of threads on there now. All right, remember when I mentioned the hole for the cotter pin? If it was straight in, it'd be kind of hard to get to it. So I turned this when I tightened it up, and now I can get to it from the outside. And then the backing plate. I want to make sure that your mating surfaces are clean, nothing's stuck to the back. That way it sits flush when you bolt it in. All right, same thing with the caliper bracket. You want to make sure that the mating surfaces are clean. These right here had some Loctite from the factory. So I'm just going to go ahead. These things have been cleaned up pretty good. I don't think what's left, stain is on there is going to do anything. So I'm just going to add some of this. Little goes a long way. Just kind of put it in the same area the factory had it. Now there is a left and a right to this. It'll only fit on one way. So just kind of, there's a recess here. That's where the washer sits in. So you put that in from the back. Okay, put a load on that one. All right, and that side is done. Just gotta tighten everything up. Once I get the steering on there and kind of get the alignment basically set, after I get the torsion bar, which is next. However, I don't have new little gasket dust shield seal things that go on here when you install them. So hopefully the Mr. Moparts and Surprise will have these in stock, so I can swing by there tomorrow morning and pick up a pair of these. So, because the O'Reilly and AutoZone, one of them couldn't find them, and the other one said it's a special order item. All right, we got all the hardware installed. Just now got to put the shock in. Pretty straightforward. If you've never done a shock before, the bushing support goes on first. Then you have a bushing. Now this bushing has two kind of shoulders that are molded in. One of them's wide, and the other one's skinny. Now this shock may fit a lot of different applications. So this car actually fits this larger side better. It actually fits right in the hole and kind of centers it. I've seen some cars that have a small hole, so you can use that end. So I'm going to put it in this way because this fits the hole real nice. And I got my bolt here for the lower mount. So what I like to do is to get these in here, compress it. Sometimes you can hold it with your hand like that. Fish it in there real quick. And get it in place. There we go. And then it'll expand itself right into where it wants to go. And the bottom one, you can kind of shove the bolt through there and put the nut on. I think these are 5/8, if I'm not mistaken. Now on the top, you can see the rubber fits right in the hole there perfectly. So I'll put that down there first. Set that on there. And then screw the nut on. All right, here's my steering stuff. Got the old one here. I got to get this apart, get it cleaned up. The only piece I'm going to be using off of here is the center link or drag link, whatever you want to call it. I got a new pitman arm, goes on the steering box. Got a new idler arm, which bolts into the K-frame. New inner and outer tie rods with adjusters. So all four of these are basically the same, inner and outer, as far as like dimensions. But there's going to be a L and R on the part number, and it's referring to the threads. So one's a left-hand thread, one's a right-hand thread. That way when you turn this one way, this will go in and this will go in at the same time at the same rate. And you turn it the other way and they'll go out. So that way you get your adjustment without having to take everything apart. That's how those work. So what I'm going to do is, after I get this thing blown apart here, I'm going to actually measure the overall length from center to center on both sides and match this one up with that one, match that one up with this one. So I'm not going to match this one to that one, I'm going to match that one to that one. Here is the hefty power steering box. It seemed to work okay. Just got to get it cleaned up. For some reason it was blue. So I got to wash this down and maybe give it an aerosol overhaul before we put it back in the car. All right, got the torsion bar here. So how do you replace these old worn out rubber seals that go on the torsion bar? Got a new set here from Mr. Moparts here in Arizona. It's a pain in the butt to try to stretch this over there. So what I did is I found an old funnel and I cut it. That barely just fits over the end there. I'll take some grease Kind of put it all over there so it slides real nice. Set that on top. So you want this to be just bigger than the end of the torsion bar, so that way it kind of sits inside there like a little hat. And then shove it down. There we go. Just like so. Now we can get these installed. Slide this all the way down, put them in. That is the torsion bar boot putter oner tool. And I will actually save this for next time. All right, it's been a couple days. Finally getting back onto this thing. A bunch of stuff going on around here. So next thing I want to do is get the brakes put together. Then we're going to put the torsion bars in and call this front end done until we get it back on the ground. Do the at-home alignment, grease all the fittings. You don't want to forget to do all that. But let's get everything assembled. Everything that we can tighten up, torque down, let's do it. And then, like I said, all of the suspension adjustments I'm going to leave loose. We'll get those adjusted once, like I said, once the car's back together on the ground, do an alignment, and at the same time, then I'll go ahead and go through and grease everything. So, anywho, let's get started. I got new calipers. I just happened to have some red caliper paint from VHT. I just kind of squirted those a little bit just so they don't rust. Normally I would do like a cast iron color just so they look natural, but I happen to have red, and what the heck. We got a new hardware kit that came with the calipers. It's got these rubber bands. I'll show you how all that goes together. I just did the other side, so it's kind of fresh in my mind how these get put together. We'll also put the new brake hose on there, and I got some brand new Bendix premium brake pads. New brake pads, new calipers, hose, hardware kit. Already got the bearings packed, and the nut on there, cotter pin, little castle retainer and everything. All that's done. So anyway, let's get going. First thing I like to do, after I install a new rotor, get the bearings packed and everything. A lot of times my hands are get kind of greasy, just to make sure I take care of everything. I clean everything. Come on, spray. I grab my rag. I have a backing plate on this, so I can't get to the back of the rotor. But I'll get it nice and clean. I usually do that twice. Okay. And then on the front, I don't have the steering on here just yet, so I can just turn it. You see all the dirt that comes off of there, nasty. Kind of turn the rag over to find kind of a relatively clean spot. Let's do it again. Don't really have to turn it on the front because I can reach the whole thing. There we go. And then it'll dry itself. So make sure you're in a well ventilated area. Not like me where I don't have the door open. I have no fan blowing or anything. So anyway, oh, it smells good. So these are the only brakes that I've ever seen come with these rubber band type things. They go on here. So these just kind of go around here. Hooks on there. And then hooks on the back here. I don't know if you can really see it. Try to keep it from twisting if you can, making sure it lays kind of flat because it's kind of a quad ring. It's got 4 sides and it's quad. Making sure it's the same all the way around, not twisting up on us. Pads, the little one goes in the back. Big one sits in the caliper here. Kind of locks in there. It doesn't really lock, but just kind of sits in place there. And remember, when you're doing your calipers, bleeder goes up, not necessarily points up, but you got to look at the cavity here of where the cylinder is for the piston, and the highest point where an air bubble would be is right here. So keep that in mind. So this is the most bizarre, one of the most bizarre ways of mounting a caliper. Get these little rubber bands or these quad rings on here. There's no pins that it slides on, so it just basically has these metal retainers. This just retains the caliper, and this I think helps hold the pads down. Now these calipers came with these bolts here. They're nice shiny gold, and they fit the thread okay. So it's a standard thread. I have the original bolts here, but this says, if you can see that, it's a 10.9, which is like a metric rating. So that's very misleading, because you look at that and you're going to say, oh, that's a metric bolt, but it's not. So I'm just going to chuck these because I don't like it. And away that goes in the garbage can, all 4 of them. So I'm going to use the original hardware on here. There we go. So having this mark on here as opposed to the 10 metric size, whatever that was, you know, that could be a deal breaker winning your concourse trophy, you know. Can't have that. Okay. That one tightened up. I'll do the bottom one, and then we'll work on the hose. This is what's called like a banjo bolt. So the bolt has a hole in it here. That hole goes in, feeds this hole right here. So when the fluid comes in from the master cylinder, goes through that hole, out that hole, and into the caliper. So it's kind of actually a hollow bolt. So you don't want to over tighten these because you'll snap them. I'm going to go ahead and pull the little keeper off of there. Set him right there for a moment. And then I'll show you something here. So I don't know if you can see this or not. I thought it was just a hex on here. See, there's 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, 5 point, and then a curve. It's missing the sixth point. So it's not quite a hex. And if you look in the hole here, try to move this line a little bit, you can kind of see that it has the same shape. So it tells you this only goes in one way. So if you're fighting with a hose and you can't seem to get it to go into the hole, you just kind of make sure you line up that rounded side to the hole in here, and then it seats all the way in. See how it comes all the way up flush? This slips under the shoulder there. Sometimes you can push these in by hand. Other times you need to use a little persuasion. Oh, there we go. And if you need to use something to drive her home with. So it goes in actually pretty easy once you know you have it lined up all the way. So once you have that all the way in there, you can kind of seat the line on there. Okay, once you got that all the way in where you want it, you can grab your flare nut wrench and start tightening it down. So you have your washer, goes on top, and then you have one on the bottom. And you gotta make sure you got everything lined up just right. Make sure you don't lose it. Sometimes it's hard to get the bolt started. Same thing with the metal brake line nuts. And sometimes you just kind of wiggle it to keep it from binding. And while you're wiggling the hose, while you're tightening it up, you'll feel it wanting to go in easy. If it's, you know, you don't want to cross thread any of this stuff. So if it's not going in easy, stop. Reassess what you're doing, what's going on, and then try it again. Before I tighten everything, I like to check the range here. Now your hose might look like it's almost overextending. That's about the limit of what I would feel comfortable doing. But that is full lock to the right, and it's actually probably further because there's no steering set up, hooked up. So this is going far to the right more than it would ever go. Plus it's at full droop. So with the weight of the suspension on there, it's going to give it a little more slack. So front brakes are done. Now I just need to order a master cylinder for a vehicle with 4-wheel disc brakes and start bleeding and all that fun stuff. But still got a lot of other car to build. And then lastly, you want to make sure that your rotor spins freely. Make sure we're not having any clearance issues on either side, rubbing the caliper or anything like that. And everything looks good. Obviously, we'll be able to re-inspect all this stuff once we get fluid in the lines and start bleeding and aligning and lubing everything. So, but we're good to go for now. I can actually, once I get the steering on there, and yeah, I can't do anything until I get that torsion bars in. All right, guys, it's time to get these done. I did screw up. I actually threw these away. I was in a hurry, just kind of cleaning up the area because I had to pull my wife's car in here to work on it. And anyway, I just tossed them. But so I pulled them out of the garbage can. Fortunately, I didn't take them out to the street yet. But I don't know which one's left and right now, and one's a little bit longer than the other. So you can see this one's quite a bit longer. So we'll match these up to this, and then it's 50-50 chance which side it goes on. So I'll just put it on one of them, and then put a steering back together. You can see on the old one here, this is the idler arm. It goes on the passenger side. This is supposed to spin as this goes back and forth, but it should not have this much play. That is worn out. And yeah, so that'll cause all sorts of alignment issues and steering issues, tons of extra play and noise and all sorts of stuff. So that's why we got a brand new one here. Nice and tight, like it's supposed to. So from Moog. Problem solver. Anyway. Alright, let's get going. So some of these weren't too terribly bad. This one's still a little snug. But this one right here, you can see it's all just kind of, regardless of the boot, it's just kind of super flopping around in there. A lot of play in it. In and out, back and forth. I can feel it. Tie rods are going to come with a little kit. It's going to have a new castle nut on there, along with a cotter pin. And then you're going to have a Zerk grease fitting. I like to install the grease fittings first. It's just easier to install them while you got them in your hand. Kind of start it with a finger. Then I like to use a socket with a T-bar. This one's a 9/32, 1/4 inch drive. Now if you over tighten it, you can actually snap it off of there. So it doesn't, they don't always seat flush. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to drive it all the way in and snap it off. I've actually done that before. And just get all 4 of them done, and then I'll crawl under there. Well, I lowered the box in there. I'm going to try to test fit it, see if it'll even go in there, and just kind of carefully lowering it down into place before I realized, oh, I forgot to turn the camera on. So got one bolt kind of started. It's got 3 of these big old bolts here. It takes a 3/4 inch socket. Basically just reach in there and just kind of line up the holes and get it threaded in. This one under here is kind of hard to get to. It'd probably be easier with a socket with an extension. Let me get under there and tighten those up. Next thing up is the idler arm. So the kit comes with 2 grease fittings. One goes there, the other one goes on the back like normal. They're a little bit bigger. They take this 5/6. They take a 5/16. We got the actual bolt that runs through here, the big old lock nut. You can see it's kind of out of round, deformed. It's made that way so it holds tight. It doesn't come loose. And it's got these little guys. Instead of a rubber boot that goes on here, you actually put one of these foam washers on there, and then there's one that goes on either side of this, captured by these what do you call these? Washers. So a little different than a regular tie rod. And that goes on the passenger side. So let's get that thing in. The sizes for these, for keeping track, 13/16 and a 7/8. So you're gonna need a couple of wrenches for that, or sockets. I got both here because I'm not sure what I'm gonna need once I get under there. There's these three little like foam rubber washers. One goes on the stem here. The other one that matches it goes on here. You got to stretch it over there. And there's a tall one that goes on the back side here. So you try to squeeze this in here along with these washers here, all at the same time. Try to sandwich everything together, which isn't easy to do. Try to get them in there, and then slip the other washer in there. All the while keeping everything lined up. It gets a little snug in there. All right, something like that, and then take the bolt. Okay. Did I feed that in there yet? Not even close. Okay. Sometimes maybe going this way. I want to put the nut on the bottom, but just to get everything lined up, I'm going to feed it from underneath first. Sometimes just getting a screwdriver or a pick or something in there to push everything around from the inside. That's all you need to do, but okay, there we go. And now getting this other washer on top lined up. All right, there we go. Obviously this is hitting until the exhaust is put on, then it'll clear. So now that everything's lined up, without moving anything, I'm just gonna draw this out, flip it over, and there we go. And then I'll put the other nut on here, and I'll tighten it up. And if you can get ratcheting end wrenches, probably make things a little easier. All right, so I got this snug. I didn't really crank on it or anything. It's just snug, and it's a little tight. Not bad, but this is one of those times where you want to leave it loose. You want to leave it loose until you got everything centered. Then you tighten it up, and then it'll pivot on the inside. You don't want it to pivot on the bolt, but I like to have everything centered when you tighten everything. I could not distinguish a left and a right on this thing. It looked completely symmetrical. There we go. So it goes all the way on like that. And then this one is going to go same thing. It's going to go on there like so as well. Whoa, ow. Stupid exhaust. Man, this thing has been a pain in my butt, this whole exhaust system. All right. I need to zip tie it up or something. Stay. Okay. So I don't know if I left this at center or not, or if it's turned at all. I really don't know. So I may need to take this pitman arm off again once I kind of get everything going. Make sure once I get a steering wheel in there, and then make sure I have it straight. Now this only goes on, it's indexed, so it only goes on 4 ways. So I could be 45 degrees off. Oh man, there we go. Stupid thing. Okay. Well, it's more or less centered there. So let me get the nut and washer on here. You stay. So I'm going to put the big old nut and washer on here, but I'm not going to tighten it up or anything. I'm just going to run it down so it don't fall off. That way, if I need to take it off and move it, I can do that easy enough. All right. Ooh, I gotta be careful turning this because otherwise I might be shooting power steering fluid everywhere. Let me put this nut on here so it don't fall. Let me get this guy on here real quick. Put the old castle nut on here. Now these I can tighten down. And yes, I realize my plate is missing here. I gotta order a new one from Brewers or one of those other guys that sells 4-speed parts because mine is all smashed up. Hopefully I don't need to pull the transmission out again to do that. So I don't really see any drips on the ground. So that's a good sign that I didn't spray power steering fluid everywhere when I turned this back and forth a little bit. All right, let's put the tie rods in here. You might wonder which way they go. A lot of cars are self-explanatory because you'll have like maybe a long one here and a short one here on the outside, and or they're shaped in a way that you can kind of only put them in one way for them to go together correctly. In this case, these are symmetrically the same. It's actually the same part number, but one has a letter designation. I think an L on the end of it, designated that this is a left-hand thread. Traditionally, you have the right-hand thread tie rod end go to the outside or the spindle, and the left-hand thread one go on the inside. That's just kind of conventional way of doing it. So basically, just slide it up in there, put your nut on, kind of move your spindle or whatever you need to move to get everything to line up. Push your exhaust out of the way. Okay, I might have to tweak this, turn that a little bit, and then turn this a little bit more, and then put the nut on there, and then I'll draw it in with the wrench and get it where I need it to go. Get the other side on there, and then I'll just kind of eyeball it. These are pretty far in, but I can turn them in and out and extend it out, whatever I need to do. So let's just get this thing assembled. I'll get the other side done, and then we'll move on to the torsion rods. Finally. All right, that is a wrap. Got the torsion bars in there. It's a bit of a struggle, and trying to record that. I apologize, I don't have any video on that. Just needed to get it done, but they're in there. I still need to, let me see if I can squeeze in here a little bit. Still need to push the little booties over the end there on both sides, but we got them in there. One of the tools that I use is this little guy right here. Now this is something that my dad built years ago when he was doing the suspension on the 70 Duster, which is now my drag car. It's just some aluminum bar stock, some heavy-duty bolts, and clamped together, and the appropriate size hole drilled. So basically just clamp that on the bar and beat the crap out of it. Now actually I didn't need it on the passenger side here, or on the driver's side, but I did use it on the passenger side. So some of the things that I ran into. Trying to get this in with everything in here, it was not happening. So I wound up having to push it all the way in through the back and drive it all the way in forward. So that's why I didn't need that bar, because I was able to just drive it in from the back here. Just kind of drove it in with a hammer. It basically just kind of fell into place once everything's lined up and properly lubricated. You do want to grease the ends here and here, so that way they don't rust in, so you can service it again later. Helps it go together and come apart at another time, whenever you want to do that. So yeah, lubricate your ends, drive it in from the back. The little boot here, I had to take that off again, but once you kind of have the bar kind of sticking out right in this area right here, oh, I did use that little clamp. I clamped it on here to keep the bar from going all the way back, because I just used that same trick that I used before with a little funnel and some grease, and I was able to just pop it over there. I think once you've done it once, I don't know, it was actually pretty easy the second time. So putting the boot on, the little booty, the little rubber booty on here while it's in the car is actually not too bad. On the other side, I had a heck of a time getting it on there. Not the boot. I left the boot on there, but I had to kind of finagle it around a bunch of stuff to get it in there. I was able to push it back in through the front and then line it up and then go forward with it. Whereas this one, I had to go all the way through from the back, which is probably the proper way to do it. So, but depending on what you have assembled, what you have in the car, will determine what's best for your vehicle. I would recommend, before you even put the suspension in, at least slide this in this way and then just leave it kind of hanging out in the back here. That way, all you have to do is slide it forward once you have your front end together. Because once everything's in place here, there's nowhere for this to go forward enough to get it to fit in the cross member there. So, anywho, that was a tough job. Actually, it wasn't that bad, but just a lot of head scratching, figuring out, because these bars don't bend, so you can't, bend it around stuff. All right, guys, got the front suspension all wrapped up. Got the torsion bars in. I can actually set this on the ground if I want to. I just need to adjust the bolt here for the torsion bar. Set the right height. Not quite ready to do that just yet, but otherwise we are all set. So I got all the steering, suspension, and brakes all wrapped up for the front end. Like I said, I still need to grease everything, tighten everything after I make my adjustments, and obviously once I get the master, we'll bleed the brakes, normal stuff. We'll do an at-home alignment with tape measures. That'll be a future video. I'm going to get some tools to do that at home and get that really, really close, if not perfect, here at home, and then go have it checked at a shop just to make sure on their computers. But yeah, here coming up in a future video here, we're going to go ahead and get all of this put together. Won't be able to fire it up yet because we still got to do wiring. I got a lot of stuff inside I got to do, and obviously all the body work, but that shouldn't take too long because, well, I mean, look at this thing. It's colorful, but it's actually not that bad. Body work is going to be very minimal on this car. Doesn't need a whole lot. So, but do need to address the interior. I gotta pull the dash out and all that good stuff. Wiring is going to be an interesting situation. So, anyway, again, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, like, share, all that good YouTube stuff. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.